A woman in a simple gray pantsuit is told to go wait with the other defendants. She is just trying to find her new office, but the court clerk sizes up her dark skin and dismisses her. The clerk, a woman who has ruled this courthouse lobby for years, lets out a high, sharp laugh. A judge, you, honey. That is the funniest thing I have heard all day. She turns her back, not knowing her entire world is about to be dismantled, because the woman she just insulted is not a defendant. She is not a lawyer. She is Judge Elara Voss, and she just saw something she was never supposed to see. The Banaka County Courthouse was not a building that welcomed you. It was a building that processed you. It stood 6 stories tall, a block of imposing, soot-stained granite. Its small, slit-like windows looked less like portals for light and more like arrow slits in a fortress. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, industrial floor wax, and the quiet, metallic scent of desperation. The main hall was still mercifully quiet. The morning rush of defendants, witnesses, and frantic lawyers had not yet begun. Elara Voss stood for a moment, just inside the heavy bronze doors, adjusting the strap of the simple leather satchel on her shoulder. She was new, not just to the courthouse, but to the state, having accepted a midterm transfer to fill a sudden vacancy on the Superior Court bench. She was here early in her civilian clothes, a charcoal gray pantsuit that was professional yet anonymous. She always did this. On her first day at any new assignment, she arrived before the chaos, before the robes and the gavel, to simply watch, to feel the rhythm of the place. A courtroom, she believed, had a heartbeat, and often that heartbeat was arrhythmic, sick. Her eyes scanned the grand, echoing lobby. To her right, a long, scratched wooden bench. To her left, the main clerk of court's office, a fortress within the fortress, protected by a wall of thick, bullet-resistant glass. There were 3 windows, but only one was open, casting a pale yellow light onto the linoleum floor. Behind that window sat a woman. She had a magnificent, towering beehive of blonde-gray hair that looked like it had been sprayed into concrete submission. Her glasses were on a beaded chain around her neck, and her face was set in a permanent expression of sour authority. A small, engraved plastic sign on the glass read, Kline, head clerk. Elara watched as a young man in an ill-fitting suit, clearly a brand-new lawyer from the public defender's office, approached Maris's window. "Excuse me, Ms. Kline," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I am just trying to file a continuance motion for State versus Peterson, I was told." Maris did not even look up from her computer. She held up one sharp-nailed finger. The lawyer physically recoiled as if she had slapped him. He waited. A full minute passed. Elara noted the power play. Maris was teaching him his place. Finally, Maris sighed, a long, theatrical breath of pure inconvenience. She turned her head slowly. "Peterson. Right. You are late," the young lawyer stammered. "The filing deadline is 9. "The file deadline is 9, Maris corrected him, her voice dripping with condescension. "The my time is valuable deadline was yesterday. You public defenders think you can just wander in here any time you please and dump your paperwork on my desk. I have judges to manage." She snatched the papers from his hand. "Go wait. I will get to it when I get to it. And your tie is crooked." The lawyer, face burning red, mumbled a thank you and scurried away, straightening his tie. Elara let out a slow, quiet breath. So that is the gatekeeper, she thought. She knew the type. Every courthouse had one, a career bureaucrat who had mistaken their small, vital cog in the machine for the entire engine. They did not just file papers, they wielded power. They controlled access, schedules, and, by extension, the flow of justice itself. And this one, Elara suspected, enjoyed the taste of that power far too much. She adjusted her satchel and walked forward. Her heels made a sharp, clean click-clack on the floor, a sound that seemed to annoy Maris Kline before she even arrived. Elara stood at the window. She gave the clerk a polite, neutral smile. "Good morning," she said. Maris's eyes did a quick, dismissive scan, from Elara's simple, unstyled hair down her dark face over the plain pantsuit and to her practical shoes. It was a comprehensive 2-second inventory of her perceived status. The verdict was clear in the clerk's eyes. Unimportant. "Morning," Maris said, her tone flat. "What case?" "No case," Elara replied, keeping her voice pleasant. "My name is Elara Voss. I am the new judicial appointment for 3B. I am here to pick up my keys and the welcome packet from the court administrator." Maris Kline went perfectly still. She looked up from her screen, and this time the look was not dismissive. It was openly, shockingly evaluative. She looked Elara up and down again. Then a small, tight smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. "Defendant check-in is down the hall, room 104, she said, gesturing vaguely with her pen. "You are early. They do not open till 8. Elara's own smile did not waver, but her eyes went cold. "I am sorry. I think you misheard me. I am not a defendant. I am Judge Voss. I am taking over Judge Thaddeus's calendar in 3B. This time, Maris Kline did not smile. She laughed. It was not a small chuckle. It was a loud, high, barking cackle that echoed in the empty lobby. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated ridicule. "A judge?" she cackled, leaning back in her chair and pressing a hand to her chest. "Honey, that is rich. Oh, they will just let anyone play dress-up these days, will they not?" She leaned forward, her face a mask of patronizing condescension. "Look, lady, I do not know what you are trying to pull. Maybe you are one of those sovereign citizen types, or maybe you are just plain lost. But judges," she said, tapping the glass, "do not look like you, and they do not just wander in off the street. Do not look like me," Elara repeated, her voice dropping degrees. "You heard me," Maris snapped, her brief humor evaporating into pure venom. "Now I have got actual work to do. Go on, go wait with the rest of the public over on the benches until your real case is called, and do not bother me again." Maris Kline swiveled her chair around, presenting Elara with her stiff, beehived back. It was the ultimate dismissal. Elara stood at the window. The silence in the lobby was profound. The young public defender, who had been lingering, was watching from the far corner, his eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. Elara felt the familiar, hot rush of anger. It was an old, tired companion, the casual, baked-in racism that assumed her skin color dictated her station. She could have escalated. She could have pulled out her judicial ID card, issued by the governor's office. She could have demanded to see the court administrator, a man named Preston Langston. But a different instinct took over. The sharp, predatory instinct of a prosecutor, which she had been before taking the bench. Maris Kline was not just rude. She was bold. This level of open contempt did not grow in a vacuum. It was nurtured. It was a sign of entitlement so deep that it felt completely protected. And Elara, who had been planning to go straight to her new chambers, made a different decision. "Fine," Elara said, her voice perfectly calm. "I will wait." She turned, not with a shuffle of defeat, but with a deliberate, measured pace. She walked to the hard wooden bench against the far wall. She sat down, placed her leather satchel in her lap, and crossed her legs. She was no longer just feeling the rhythm of the courthouse. She was hunting. Maris Kline, from her glass fortress, was the most powerful person in this lobby, and she had just made the critical, fatal mistake of laughing at the one person who had just become more powerful than her. The lobby began to fill. The wave was composed of people who had to be there: the defendants on bond, the families, the people fighting evictions. They shuffled in, clutching pieces of paper, their faces drawn with anxiety. They formed a disorganized, nervous line in front of Maris's window. From her vantage point, Elara Voss had a perfect, unobstructed view. She sat as still as a heron, her gaze missing nothing. She watched Maris's theater. To a white man in a crisp suit, she was all, "Yes, sir, Mr. Quaid." And "Right away, sir." To a panicked-looking Hispanic woman holding a crying baby, she was a brick wall. "English?" Maris barked. "I do not speak whatever that is." Next. To a young black man asking where to pay a fine, she sighed. "Do I look like a cashier? Go to the basement and tuck your shirt in. This is a courthouse, not a nightclub." It was a disgusting, predictable display. But then Elara saw it. The man in the crisp suit, the one Maris had called Mr. Quaid, returned. His name was Harlan Quaid. Elara recognized him vaguely from a legal review. He was a bottom feeder, a fixer who specialized in DUEs for the rich and messy divorces. He was all cologne, expensive watch, and reptilian charm. He did not stand in line. He walked right up to the side of the glass booth, to a small solid door marked Clerk's office, staff only. He gave it a specific rat-a-tat knock. A moment later, the door was unlocked from the inside. Maris Kline herself opened it, just a crack. Her entire demeanor had changed. The sour, combative mask was gone, replaced by a greedy, obsequious smile. "Harlan, you are early," she whispered, her voice carrying in the quiet hall. "Got a client with an arrangement," Quaid murmured, slipping a hand into his jacket. "You have that thing we discussed, the AM docket assignment, right here," Maris said. She discreetly passed him a single sheet of paper, folded twice. Elara watched, laser-focused. A docket assignment. Why the secrecy? Lawyers could pull that online. Unless this was a pre-assignment. Unless Maris was letting him know which judge his case would be randomly assigned to before the assignment was officially made, giving him time to prepare a judge-specific motion, or worse, file a last-second continuance if he got a judge he did not like. It was gaming the system. Quaid took the paper and just as smoothly passed her an envelope. It was a standard white business envelope, but it was thick, too thick for a letter. It was the thickness of folded cash. Maris took it without a second glance, slipping it into the drawer of her desk. "Pleasure doing business," she said. "Always, Maris," Quaid said, flashing a toothy grin. He turned and strode out of the courthouse, the picture of confidence. Elara felt her blood run cold. This was not just racism. This was not just a bitter woman on a power trip. This was felony corruption. This was bribery happening in plain sight before the court was even in session. She almost stood up. Her instinct was to flash her badge, call the bailiffs, and have them both arrested. But she held back. The prosecutor in her took over. One observation is an incident. Two is a pattern. She waited. A woman ran into the lobby. She was frantic, her eyes red from crying, her hair a mess. She clutched a thick sheaf of documents to her chest. She looked like she had not slept in days. She ran to Maris's window, where the line was now deep. "Please," the woman begged, cutting the line. "Please, I have to file this. It is a restraining order. He found my sister's address. He said he is coming. Please, I have to file it before my hearing. The man in line, a construction worker in a dusty jacket, turned. Hey lady, back of the line. I cannot, she sobbed, pressing her papers against the glass. Please, ma'am, please. Maris Kline looked at the woman with a face of utter boredom. First, you do not cut the line. Second, all TROs and ex parte motions had to be filed to be heard this morning. You are late. You will have to file it, and it will be on tomorrow's docket. Tomorrow? The woman shrieked, a sound of pure terror. He could find me by tomorrow. I do not have until tomorrow. It is right here. Cannot you just stamp it? Maris said, pointing to the clock. The computer locks the filings. My hands are tied. It is the system. The woman completely broke down, sliding down the glass wall onto the floor, her sobs echoing. No, 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 you do not understand. Elara watched. This was the moment. This was the test. Maris watched the woman cry for a long, cold moment. Then she sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. She came out from behind the door, walking over to the sobbing woman. Look, Maris said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, dirty whisper that Elara could just barely overhear. Look, get up. You are making a scene. She helped the woman to her feet. I might be able to help you. The system is flexible sometimes, but the late filing override requires a fee, a significant one for the, administrative hassle. The woman's head snapped up, hope and confusion warring on her face. A fee. I will pay it. How much? The fine for an emergency override, Maris said, her eyes dead, is cash. Elara watched the woman's face fall. I only have, it is all I have until my check. Maris considered this. She glanced around the lobby. Her eyes swept right over Elara, dismissing her as part of the worthless scenery. It will have to do, Maris conceded, as if doing her a great favor. Give it to me. The woman fumbled in her purse, her hands shaking so badly she could barely open her wallet. She pulled out a wad of crumpled bills, of 50, 20s, and 1s. She handed them over. Maris took the cash, palmed it, and then took the woman's paperwork. Wait here, she commanded. She went back into her booth. Elara watched her every move. Maris sat at her computer. She typed for a moment. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out a manual date and timestamp, and fiddled with the dials. She rolled it back. She stamped the woman's papers. Received. She had backdated a legal filing in exchange for a cash bribe. She was extorting a domestic violence victim. Elara's blood ran cold. She felt her blood run cold. The rage she felt was so cold, so pure, it was almost serene. It was the rage of a surgeon identifying a cancer. This was not just a rotten cog. This was a tumor that was poisoning the entire institution. A tall, uniformed man came through the side doors. He had bailiff on his jacket and a name tag that read, Officer Rocco. He had a weary, seen-it-all face. He nodded at Maris. Morning, Maris. Usual chaos? You know it, Maris said, smiling warmly at him. It was a complete transformation. The dregs are out in force today. Judge Thaddeus would have had half of them in holding for contempt by now. I do not know about this new one. Voss, right? From out of state? Rocco asked, sipping a coffee. That is the one, Maris said, lowering her voice, but not enough. Some affirmative action hire, I am sure. Probably will not know a motion to compel from a motion to dismiss. We will have to train another one. It is exhausting. Elara listened, her expression unchanged, Affirmative action hire. Another barb. Another assumption. She filed it away with the rest. "Well," Rocco said, finishing his coffee and tossing the cup. "Time to open the doors to the circus. You ready for 3B? "As I will ever be," Maris sighed. Rocco walked to Courtroom 3B, which was right off the main lobby, and unlocked the heavy wooden doors. The first few lawyers and citizens waiting for the docket began to trickle in. Maris gathered a stack of files, her face settling back into its sour mask. This was the moment. Elara Voss stood up. The sudden movement after her long stillness drew Maris's eye. Elara zipped her leather satchel. She adjusted the collar of her pantsuit. She walked not to the clerk's window, but directly toward the judge's and staff only door beside it, the same one Harlan Quaid had used. Maris's head snapped up. The casual contempt was back, now sharpened with irritation. "Hey, you! I told you that door is not for the public," she shouted. The entire lobby quieted. "Are you deaf? I told you to wait on the bench." Elara ignored her. She reached the door. "Ma'am." Maris was on her feet now, her voice rising to a screech. "I will have you held in contempt of court. You cannot just—" Elara reached into her suit pocket and pulled out a simple white plastic key card. It was the temporary all-access pass given to her by the head of state judicial administration, pending her permanent ID. She did not look at Maris. She faced the small black scanner on the wall and held the card up. There was a quiet beep, and the light on the scanner flashed from red to green. Maris Kline's screech died in her throat, choked off by a sudden, sharp intake of breath. The lobby was dead silent. The only sound was the heavy click of the electronic lock disengaging. Elara pushed the door open. She paused in the doorway and turned her head. She looked directly at Maris Kline, whose face had gone the color of spoiled milk. The beehive hair seemed to wilt. Her mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. "Mrs. Kline," Judge Elara Voss said, her voice quiet, but carrying the unmistakable ring of absolute authority. It was a voice that did not request. It commanded. "It is time. Court convenes soon. In that time, I expect 3 things." Maris's hands, which had been on her hips, were now shaking at her sides. "First," Elara continued, "you will retrieve the keys to my chambers, Chambers 3B, from wherever you have them stored. Second, you will fetch my welcome packet from the court administrator's office. I am sure Mr. Langston will be fascinated to hear about my reception this morning. And third," Elara said, her eyes boring into the terrified clerk, "you will bring me a cup of black coffee. You will place all 3 items on my bench in Courtroom 3B. You will then return to your station and prepare for the roll call." Elara let the orders hang in the air. The young public defender, who had been lingering to watch, was now desperately trying to hide his smile behind a case file. Your Honor," Maris stammered, her voice a panicked whisper. I did not recognize you. I thought—" "You thought," Elara said, cutting her off with surgical precision, "that I was a defendant. You thought I was the public. You thought I did not look like a judge. What you failed to think, Ms. Kline, is that the person you are speaking to, any person who walks into this courthouse, deserves a baseline of human dignity. Your assumptions are not my problem, but they are, as of this moment, your problem." Elara stepped through the doorway. "Do not be late. It sets a bad example." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving a stunned, silent lobby in her wake. Maris Kline stood frozen, her face a grotesque mask of dawning horror. The blood drained from her head so fast she had to grip her desk to stay upright. The humiliation was total. The power dynamic of the Banaka County Courthouse had just been inverted, instantly and violently. Then terror gave way to panic. She flew into motion, grabbing her own keys, fumbling at her drawer, then sprinting as much as she could sprint down the hall toward the administrator's office. She was no longer a queen. She was a terrified servant, running an errand for a new master. And the worst part, the part that was making her heart hammer against her ribs, was not just the humiliation. It was the sudden, sickening memory of Harlan Quaid. The envelope, the woman with the restraining order, the backdated stamp. How long had that black woman, that judge, been sitting on that bench? What exactly had she seen? The time Elara spent in her new chambers was a blur of focused preparation. The room smelled of old books and lemon polish. Judge Thaddeus, her predecessor, had left nothing behind. It was a blank slate. Elara found the judicial robes hanging in a tall wooden wardrobe. She pulled the heavy black fabric over her shoulders, the familiar weight settling on her. It was her armor. She was not, as Maris had suggested, an affirmative action hire. She was a Harvard Law graduate, a former assistant U.S. attorney, and a federal prosecutor who had dismantled two of the largest racketeering rings in Chicago. She had taken this state-level judgeship to be closer to her aging father. She had not come here looking for a fight, but Maris Kline, in her arrogance, had just started a war. Elara stood behind the thick wooden door that led to the bench. She heard the muffled sounds of the courtroom settling. Officer Rocco, his face carefully neutral, bellowed, "All rise." The Banaka County Superior Court, Part 3B, is now in session, the Honorable Judge Elara Voss presiding. The door opened. Elara walked out and up to the bench. The courtroom was medium-sized and packed. Lawyers filled the jury box and the front rows. Defendants and their families, a mix of anxiety and boredom, filled the back. And at the clerk station to her right stood Maris Kline. She looked as if she had aged years. Her face was pale and slick with sweat. The keys to the chambers, the welcome packet, and a styrofoam cup of coffee were all placed precisely, as ordered, on the corner of Elara's bench. Elara sat. The room sat. The scraping of chairs echoed. She opened the first file. "Good morning," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone, crisp and clear. "I am Judge Voss. I will be handling this calendar moving forward. I have my own set of rules. They are simple. Be on time, be prepared, and be respectful. To me, to the court, and to each other. We will conduct the business of the people with integrity and efficiency. Is that understood?" A murmur of "Yes, Your Honor," rippled through the lawyers. "Excellent," Elara said. She looked down at the docket, and she saw the first case, State versus Peterson, the young public defender's case. "First up," she said, "docket, State versus Peterson. Counsel, please approach." The young PD, the one from the lobby, walked forward, his eyes still wide. "Your Honor," he began, "I filed a motion for continuance this morning." "I see it," Elara said, "and I also see that the state opposes." The assistant district attorney, a sharp woman in a blue suit, stood. "We do, Your Honor. The victim has flown in. We are ready to proceed." Elara looked back at the PD. "Counsel, your reason." My client's alibi witness was just located. She lives in rural." "Motion granted," Elara said. The ADA and the PD both blinked. Your Honor," the ADA said. "Motion granted. Counsel," Elara repeated, staring at the file. "The right to present a full defense is constitutional. The inconvenience to the state is logistical. We will find a new date." She looked at Maris. Ms. Kline, please find a new trial date for, let us say, from now. Please coordinate with both counsel. Maris fumbled with the computer, her hands visibly shaking so much she could barely type. The young PD was staring, mouth agape. He had just won a motion he was sure to lose. It was the first subtle shift. Elara proceeded through the next cases with rapid, sharp efficiency. She denied a routine delay from a high-priced lawyer. She granted a hardship request from a defendant. She was fair, fast, and unyielding. The lawyers were catching on quickly. This judge did not suffer fools. Then she reached the middle of the stack. Next, a request for an ex parte temporary restraining order, Hale versus Hale. The frantic woman from the lobby, Lydia Hale, was sitting in the front row, trembling. Ms. Hale, please approach, Elara said. She read the petition. It was a brutal, straightforward story of spousal abuse and escalating threats. Ms. Hale, I have read your petition. I find your claims credible and the threat imminent. The temporary restraining order is granted, effective immediately, Elara said. The woman burst into tears, this time of relief. Thank you, Your Honor. Oh, God, thank you. Officer Rocco, Elara said, please escort Ms. Hale to the TRO office to have the order served and ensure she has a safe escort from this building. Yes, Your Honor, Rocco said, moving. And Ms. Kline, Elara said, her voice suddenly sharp. Maris flinched as if struck. Yes, Your Honor. Please bring me the original filing of Hale versus Hale, the one from your desk. This was it. The air in the courtroom changed. This was not a normal request. Your Honor. Maris stammered. The file is. It is right here in the system. I am not asking about the system, Ms. Kline. I am asking for the physical paper you stamped this morning. Retrieve it now. Maris's face was ashen. This was a direct, impossible to misunderstand order. She walked, her legs like lead, back to her office behind the courtroom. The entire room was silent, watching this bizarre, tense drama unfold. She returned a moment later with the file. She handed it up to Elara. Elara looked at it. She looked at the smudged red ink stamp in the corner. Received. She then looked up at the large institutional clock on the courtroom wall. Ms. Kline, Elara said, her voice dangerously quiet. I observed you take this filing from Ms. Hale myself. I observed you stamp it. Maris's breath was coming in short, panicked gasps. And my observation, Elara continued, is that this filing was received by you, not before. The courtroom exploded in hushed whispers. The lawyer's eyes went wide. This was an accusation of backdating, a cardinal sin. Your Honor, there must be a mistake. The clock, my stamp. There is a mistake, Elara said, her voice like steel. But it is not mine. I am also curious, Ms. Kline, about the emergency override fee you charged Miss Hale, the cash. I would like to know what statute or county ordinance authorizes that specific fee. Maris Kline made a small, strangled sound. She gripped the clerk's station. She was trapped. She had been caught red-handed by the one person she could not bully, lie to, or dismiss. And then Elara said, raising her voice to address the entire court, we are going to have a long discussion about docket assignments, specifically the pre-arrangement consultation you had this morning with a Mr. Harlan Quaid. In the back of the courtroom, Harlan Quaid, who had just sauntered in to handle his case, froze. His smug grin vanished. He saw Maris's white face, and then his eyes locked with Elara's. He knew instantly that he was caught. Elara Voss leaned forward. Ms. Kline, I am ordering an immediate recess. I am also ordering Officer Rocco to secure your desk, your computer, and your personal effects. You are not to touch anything. We will be having a meeting with the presiding judge and the district attorney's office. Officer Rocco. Your Honor, please escort Miss Kline to my chambers. And Officer Rocco. Call the DA. Tell him to send his best investigator from the Public Integrity Unit immediately and ensure Mr. Harlan Quaid does not leave the courthouse. I believe he is a material witness to multiple felonies. All rise. Rocco bellowed, his voice booming, as Elara stood and swept from the bench. Maris Kline let out a low wail and sank into her chair, her face in her hands. The entire courtroom was in stunned, chaotic silence. The gavel had fallen, not on a defendant, but on the system itself. Elara's chambers were a hive of sudden, furious activity. Officer Rocco stood by the door with a trembling, weeping Maris Kline, who had been placed in a simple guest chair. Elara was on the phone, not with the presiding judge, not yet. She was on the phone with Preston Langston, the court administrator. Preston, this is Judge Voss. Yes, the new 3B. No, I have not had a chance to look at the packet, and that is why I am calling, Elara said, her voice a whip crack of controlled fury. She watched Maris over the rim of her desk. I am calling to inform you that I have just placed your head clerk, Maris Kline, on administrative leave, effective immediately. The voice on the other end of the phone was a squawk of protest. With all due respect, Preston, I do not give a damn about protocol. I am telling you what I saw. I have been in this courthouse. I have personally witnessed Ms. Kline commit, by my count, at least 3 separate felonies: bribery, extortion, and tampering with court records. So, you can either come down here and manage the administrative side of this, or you can read about it in the newspaper tomorrow after I am done with the district attorney. Your choice. She hung up without waiting for a reply. Your Honor, Maris whispered, her voice from crying. Please, it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I will pay the money back. You will pay what money back, Ms. Kline? Elara asked, her voice soft. It was the prosecutor's trap. The cash you extorted from a domestic violence victim, or the money Mr. Quaid gave you in the envelope. How many envelopes have there been? Maris, how long has this been your little side business? I do not know what you are talking about, Maris tried. A last, desperate grasp at denial. You took a thick white envelope from Harlan Quaid in exchange for a folded piece of paper. You then placed that envelope in the top left-hand drawer of your desk, Elara said, her voice devoid of emotion. I am willing to bet my entire judicial pension that when the investigators open that drawer, they will find that envelope, and it will be full of cash. Am I wrong? Maris's face crumpled. She knew she was done. The precision of the observation was undeniable. The door to the chambers opened, and presiding Judge Darius swept in. He was an older man with a lion's mane of white hair, and he looked apoplectic. Voss, what in God's name is the meaning of this? He boomed. You cannot just detain a court employee. You have thrown the entire morning docket into chaos. There are procedures. Judge Darius, Elara said, standing up. She was shorter than him, but she seemed to take up all the oxygen in the room. Please sit. Ms. Kline, she gestured to Maris, is a criminal. I caught her red-handed, selling docket assignments and extorting victims. Darius stopped, his mouth open. Maris, our Maris, she has been here for years. That is a libelous accusation, Judge. Is it? Elara said. She walked over to Officer Rocco. Officer, you secured her desk. Yes, Your Honor. Nothing in or out. Excellent. Judge Darius, Elara said, turning back to him, will you accompany me on a brief field trip? Without waiting for an answer, Elara swept out of her chambers, past the roiling chaos of the courtroom hallway, and back to the clerk's office. Darius and Rocco, with Maris in tow, followed. The lobby was packed and buzzing. Everyone knew something was wrong. Elara ignored them all, walked behind the counter, and stood at Maris's desk. The top left-hand drawer. Ms. Kline, Elara said, please open it. Maris, shaking like a leaf, used her key. She pulled the drawer open. Inside, beneath a stack of sticky notes and paper clips, were 2 envelopes. One was the thick white one from Harlan Quaid. The other was a crumpled mess of bills, though the cash from Lydia Hale. Judge Darius let out a sound like a deflating tire. Oh, Maris, no. Elara, using a pen to avoid touching the envelopes, nudged the white one. This one, I suspect, is from Mr. Quaid. She turned to Darius. She has been selling docket assignments, Judge, letting lawyers like Quaid know in advance who they are getting, so they can prep for a friendly judge or ditch a hard one. She has been poisoning the well. And this, Elara said, gesturing to the crumpled cash, is from a victim of domestic violence. Ms. Kline charged her to backdate a restraining order petition, a petition that by law she is required to file for free. She extorted a woman who was terrified for her life. Judge Darius looked at Maris with a profound, soul-deep disappointment. Maris, why? Maris finally broke. It was a complete, shattering confession. Because they do not pay me enough, she shrieked, her voice cracking. Years in this pigsty, years of dealing with this trash, she gestured to the lobby. Years of fixing the judge's mistakes, of being yelled at, of being treated like a servant. Quaid, he was just grateful. He said, I deserved more. And that woman, she was late. There are rules. The rules you broke, Elara said, her voice like ice. The rules you sold. At that moment, 2 men in dark suits arrived. They flashed badges at Officer Rocco. DA's office. Public integrity. We got a call from a Judge Voss. That is me, Elara said, stepping forward. Gentlemen, welcome to the Banaka County Courthouse. This is your primary suspect, Ms. Maris Kline. And this, she gestured to the drawer, is your primary evidence. I believe you will find she has been running a pay-to-play scheme for at a minimum the last time. I suspect, given her arrogance, it has been going on for years. The investigators' eyes lit up. This was not a case they would have to build. It was a gift-wrapped conviction. As the investigators began the formal process, reading Maris her rights, photographing the drawer, Elara turned to Judge Darius. This is the rot, Judge, she said, her voice low. This is what happens when we, the judiciary, get too comfortable. We let the Marises of the world run things. We trade integrity for convenience. This is not just her failure. It is ours. Darius, who had been a judge for decades, looked around his lobby as if seeing it for the first time. He saw the desperate faces, the confusion, the fear, and he saw the woman who had been exploiting it all. You are right, Judge, he said, his voice heavy. You are absolutely right. He looked at Elara, his eyes filled with a new, dawning respect. What do you need? I need a new clerk, Elara said. A temporary one immediately. Someone who understands that their only job is to serve the public, not to rule it. And I need a full, top-to-bottom audit of every case Miss Kline and Mr. Quaid have ever touched together. This, she said, looking at the crying, hyperventilating Maris, is just the tip of the iceberg. The arrest of Maris Kline sent a seismic shockwave through the courthouse. She was not just an employee, she was an institution. The sight of her being led out of the lobby in handcuffs, sobbing and shouting about her years, was a spectacle that brought the building to a grinding halt. But Elara Voss was just getting started. While the DA's investigators processed Maris, who, faced with the irrefutable evidence, had begun to sing like a canary, Elara had Harlan Quaid brought to her chambers. He entered, not with handcuffs, but with two very large bailiffs and his own high-priced lawyer, who had apparently been on speed dial. The smugness was gone, replaced by a waxy, terrified pallor. Judge Voss, his lawyer, began. "A man named Harris. My client is here voluntarily, but, save it, Mr. Harris," Elara said, sitting behind her new desk. "Your client is not here voluntarily. He is here because I ordered him detained as a material witness to bribery of a court officer. However, in the last time, Ms. Kline has cooperated, and it seems material witness is being upgraded to co-conspirator." Quaid went white. It was a gift. She helps me with scheduling. It is a tip, like a barista." Elara actually laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "A tip? Mr. Quaid, you are an officer of the court. You know just as I know that what you did was bribe a public official to gain an unfair advantage in the judicial assignment process. You were not tipping her. You were paying her to stack the deck, to compromise the very foundation of blind justice in this county." She leaned forward. "So here is what is going to happen. The DA's investigators are right next door. In a moment, they are going to come in here and arrest you. You will be processed, and your bail will be set at a level that will make your eyes water. The state bar will be notified this afternoon, and your license will be summarily suspended by sundown. This is an outrage. No, this is a reckoning," Elara corrected him. "However, I am a practical woman. Ms. Kline's corruption is my primary concern. You," she said to Quaid, "are just a symptom. So, you have one choice. You can cooperate fully. You can detail every single bribe, every case you paid to have steered, every piece of information you bought from her. You will wear a wire, and you will help them uncover just how deep this rot goes. If you do that, maybe the DA will be inclined to listen when you ask for leniency. Or you can play tough with Mr. Harris, and I will personally recommend to the DA that you are charged with the maximum on every single count. Your career is over, Mr. Quaid. The only question is whether you spend the next time in a cell." Quaid looked at his lawyer, his eyes screaming for help. Harris, seeing the brick wall in front of him, just sighed and loosened his tie. You should listen to the judge." Quaid collapsed. He confessed to everything. It was worse than Elara had imagined. Maris Kline had been paying, for time. It started small, cash to lose a file for a day. It escalated to cash to guarantee his case landed in front of a notoriously lenient part-time judge. But the real bombshell, the one that made Elara feel sick, was what was in the folded paper she had seen him take that morning. It was not a docket assignment. It was a sealed witness list. Quaid's arrangement was for a high-profile felony assault. His client was a wealthy, connected thug. The paper Maris had given him contained the name and home address of the prosecution's star witness, the victim's sister, who had been in hiding. Maris Kline had not just been selling scheduling favors, she had been selling people for cash. Elara's blood ran cold. She immediately called the DA's investigator back in. "Forget Quaid. I need a protective detail, now. Get a team to this address," she said, reading the address from Quaid's confession. The witness in State versus. Marchetti is compromised. The revelation changed everything. This was no longer bribery. This was conspiracy. This was endangerment. This was a level of corruption that could get people killed. The karma that hit Maris Kline was no longer about losing her job. It was about losing her life. When confronted with this, with the fact that her tip had put a woman's life in mortal danger, even Maris's defenses shattered. The investigators found a client list in a locked drawer. Harlan Quaid was just one of lawyers in her pay-to-play scheme. She had a ledger. She had dates. She had amounts. Her years of service was a criminal enterprise, built on a foundation of casual cruelty and systemic racism, and funded by extorting the desperate and the corrupt. She was not just fired. She was held without bail, as a flight risk and a danger to the community. Her entire life's work, her identity as the queen of the courthouse, was incinerated in the space of hours. All because she laughed at the wrong woman. All because she assumed that a black woman in a pantsuit could not possibly be her new boss. The Banaka County Courthouse did not recover quickly. The Maris Kline scandal, as the papers dubbed it, was catastrophic. Maris Kline pleaded guilty to a slew of charges, including counts of bribery, counts of tampering with public records, and one count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. The judge, brought in from another county, threw the book at her. The years of service was not a mitigating factor. It was an aggravating one. She was sentenced to years in state prison. She fainted when the sentence was read. Harlan Quaid was disbarred. His testimony, given in exchange for a lighter sentence, took down other lawyers and permanently tarnished the careers of more. His wealthy client, seeing the case against him implode, also took a plea. The witness, thankfully, had been secured by the DA's team just in time. But Elara Voss's work was far from over. The real karma was not just Maris's punishment, it was the rebuilding. Elara, with the full backing of a humble Judge Darius, led the charge. Her first act was to hire a new head clerk. She promoted the young, timid public defender, who had been Maris's first victim of the day. He was stunned, but Elara saw his core of integrity. "Mr. Peterson," she told him in her chambers, "I am not offering you this job because you are a great lawyer. I am offering it because you were respectful. Even when you were being disrespected, you followed the rules, even when you were being bullied. This office does not need a tyrant. It needs a public servant. Can you be that?" He accepted, and his first act was to hang a new sign at the clerk's window, in English and Spanish. "We are here to help. Your dignity is our priority." Elara's second act was to find Lydia Hale, the woman who had paid the bribe. Elara personally apologized to her on behalf of the court. She had the cash returned to her from a court emergency fund, and she presided over Ms. Hale's final restraining order hearing herself, granting a permanent order of protection. Justice, delayed and extorted, was finally served. But the biggest change was in the atmosphere. Judge Elara Voss had, in one morning, established a new standard. Her courtroom 3B became a legend. It was efficient. It was intolerant of games. But it was, above all, fair. She treated the public defenders with the same respect as the corporate lawyers. She listened to defendants. She explained her rulings. The casual, cruel racism that Maris had wielded like a weapon was gone, choked out by the new light. Later, Elara was walking through the lobby at the end of a long day. The lobby was clean. The air felt lighter. The new head clerk, Mr. Peterson, was at the window, patiently explaining a complex filing procedure to a young woman. The young woman was black. She was dressed in a simple suit, and she was clearly nervous, a first-year associate from a small firm. "I know it is confusing," Peterson was saying kindly, The motion for substitution of counsel has to be filed with the original case number, but the proposed order needs here. Let me just show you. He came out from behind the glass and stood beside her, pointing to the line on her form. The young lawyer looked up at him, her relief palpable. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was worried I would get it wrong. Everyone gets it wrong the first time. Peterson smiled. My job is to help you get it right. Welcome to Banaka County, Counselor. Elara watched the exchange. She saw the young lawyer stand up straighter, her confidence restored. She saw the fear in her eyes replaced by a look of belonging. Elara continued walking toward the exit. She did not say a word. She did not have to. The quiet click-clack of her heels on the polished floor was the only sound. It was the sound of integrity. It was the sound of a promise kept. The fortress had been breached. The rot had been carved out. And the work of justice, real justice, was finally beginning. True karma is not just about punishment. It is about consequences. Maris Kline's racist, arrogant laughter was an investment in her own destruction. She spent years building a corrupt kingdom, but she tore it all down in one morning because she could not see past the color of a woman's skin. She did not just lose her job, she lost her freedom. And Judge Elara Voss did not just get an apology, she got a chance to rebuild the entire system. She replaced the rot with respect. She tore down the walls of prejudice and rebuilt a foundation of integrity. This story is a powerful reminder that the person you dismiss today could be the person who holds your entire world in their hands tomorrow. Respect is not optional. It is the law. What did you think of Maris's downfall? Was it justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories where hard karma is served, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who needs to see it, and most importantly, hit subscribe and ring that bell. We have new dramatic stories dropping, and you will not want to miss a single one.